Welcome back to Stu's Structures. We're here to continue with the coaling tower build in this video number 4 of the series, so stay tuned. So welcome back. I'm glad you're back to share this time with me. We are here to continue working on detail items for the coaling tower. You know, in the last segment we did the spotlight platforms for up above. I'm going to hold off on adding a lot of this material to the building until I get everything that's underneath of the building in there first. And that's coaling chutes and some pulleys and some things like that. Once I get everything on the outside of the building, it's just going to be next to impossible to turn this thing upside down to get that stuff under there. So we're going to start off in this video putting coaling chutes and stuff together and start that process of everything underneath the building. And then from there, I don't know where we're going next. There's sanding facilities on one end that I want to go ahead and build into the way it was originally built into the coaling tower. There's all the handrails and platforms that work their way down from clear up at the top of that building and stairs all the way down and wrapping around the building down to ground level. So I don't know. We'll start with the coaling chutes and we'll see how far we get with this video. Maybe we can get started on something else. We'll see how the time goes. So let's just jump into this. Now the coaling chutes, to begin with these, I want to start underneath this building because I don't want to put all these really fragile scenery parts on the outside and the upper parts of this building and then have to turn this thing over and work on it. So you can see underneath in the 2 wide bays, there's 2 coaling chutes per bay, and then in the real narrow bay on the far right hand side, there's 1 coaling chute under that bay. Now there's all these 3 on the outside too, but I'm going to hold off on those and just strictly work underneath on the coaling chutes under there to begin with. Here's just kind of a better look at kind of, how they set underneath of there. And, I don't have good pictures of any of this under here, so I'm just going to have to kind of make this up as I go. Now I have 2 different kinds of coaling chutes. I had brought this up before. These are coaling chutes that are made from Tichy, and I like the looks of these, but you won't really see the detail underneath. And the original tower that came from Walthers had these coaling chutes. And they also had some of these pulley systems for underneath as well. So I'm going to use 5 of these for underneath the bottom sides and get them mounted underneath the where the coaling chutes go underneath there. And these were predetermined except for the one in the narrow shed by, Walthers' way they had molded their coaling chute bottom under there. So I'm going to come back and, after I assemble all 5 of these, which you saw in the previous picture, I'm going to come back and put some black paint on these. And I'm just going to test fit them down inside all the holes where the coaling chutes mount, and then scrape paint off of the gray area and the black off the coaling chute so I can get glue on them and get good adherence. Then I go ahead and mount all 5 of those underneath there, and I have, the basic coaling chutes in place. A fairly simple project compared to some of the stuff I've worked on. Now these have to be glued upright into a certain position, so I just set some tracks under here and some steam locomotives so I can see how high I need to glue these so that I don't create a clearance problem with the locomotives. Now these would have been raised and lowered with a pulley system, so I've got all these pulleys that came out of the Walthers kit. And several of these have these mounts that mounted onto them, and so I went ahead and used these 6 and painted them black, and there's places underneath there next to the coaling chutes where these will mount, but I need 2 per chute underneath it there, so I'm going to need at least another 4 to begin with because the 5 coaling chutes will require 10 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and just basically build these, and I cut little triangles and some flat pieces, and I mount the triangles onto the pulley systems, and then I mount those onto the flat plate that I'm going to glue up inside. And then when I come back and put paint on these, that's basically 10 of those ready to go rock and roll and put up in there. So like I said, there's a little square underneath it there where Walthers had predetermined they needed to go. So I just scraped the paint off to get good glue adhesion on these as well, and mount 2 of these on either side of each of the coaling chutes. And once those are in place, you know, I start thinking about, all right, how would this have worked? You know, obviously in these pictures I can't see underneath it there to figure out how that works, but you can see there are the round, you know, cannonball like weights underneath these openings where the coaling chutes were under there. So they have to be something similar to these outside systems. So, you know, when I turned over and looked at it, I'm going to have to add some extra pulleys. So I'm going to have to add these extra pulleys under there, and that's 2 more per chute. So I need another 10 of these. So I just went in my scrap box and found more, you know, this plastic that I can cut more of those squares and triangles from. And I'm just going to use this real thin stuff for the squares, and the heavier stuff I'm going to use for the triangles to mount on either side of the pulleys. And I'm just going to come through and make 10 more of those pulleys, you know, like that match the others I did before. And I just come through and glue one of these triangles on one side of each of those pulleys to begin with. You know, while the glue's soft, it kind of moves around. So I want to have one side set up, and then I can glue the other side on to match that one so that it sits flat on these square pads down underneath. And then I have pulleys. You know, I did go in and did 4 more because eventually you're going to see I need some more of these for the sanding chutes on the outside as well. But 10 of these I'm going to go ahead and, you know, just put on a board, and I'm just using, you know, tape here, and I'm taping them down because I'm just going to rattle can these, and when I spray paint them, they're just so lightweight they'll blow all over. So, you know, I grabbed my can of paint after they're taped down on the board and went outside and just shot black paint on these and painted them. And then once that's done, you know, I got to let this dry a little bit here, but then I can just pull this off the tape and they're ready to mount up underneath that, and I can add these underneath the same as I did the others before. Now there's not really a place under here where these will go, but you know, the weights would have hung right next to this open window area. So the ropes that come from the chute up to those upper pulleys, then the rope would come down to these other pulleys on the side wall, and then the ropes with the weights on them would hang from those. Now, you know, I'm just going to scratch paint and glue these into place, and they're not marked on the Walthers kit, so I'm kind of making this up as I go along, but I think these are going to work out just fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is just strip a whole bunch more wire. So, you know, I need to just, like I did before, take this rubber off of it and then twist the 4 strands. And it's just, you know, this takes a little bit. These strands in this wire are just extremely fine. So, you know, I stripped, there's 2 strands of these in plastic together, so I separate the 2 strands. And then, you know, thank God I don't have to use a knife or anything to do these, just using my fingernails, and it's just pulling off. The plastic is breaking, coating is pulling off of it really easy. So I just cut a whole bunch of this, and, you know, and just keep stripping and stripping and stripping. And after a while, you know, you can see how fine this is. There's just 4 little strands in this, and it's just extremely fine. So it's a little tedious to work with and trying not to break the strands. But then once I have it stripped, I just need to braid it basically. And all I'm doing is holding the end of it and taking the white plastic down below and rolling it through my fingers to get it to wind around each other so that they're not individual strands, and that they're a nice, you know, braided wire clear up to the very end of the wire. And this takes, you know, a little bit of time to do all this for the amount that I need, because remember, those chutes have 2 sets of pulleys on each side, so there's 5 pulleys underneath, so I'm going to need a total of 10 of these all together. So, you know, it takes me a while to go through and just cut all these. And once I have them to this point, I figured out what kind of length I needed up inside there, and I just cut them all to the length. Once I had one cut, I went ahead and just ran it up in there and held it into place and tested it to make sure I wasn't going to make them too short and have to do this all over again. Then what I do is just bend the very end of this, and you know, you can barely see this on that white paint there, but that goes into the hole on the coaling chute itself, and the other end then I trim exactly to the length to go up to the upper side of that pulley. Now these all the way down to the counterweights would have been a single piece, but I'm just doing this just for ease of putting this together because they're not actually going to be functional. And I go through, and while it's laying on this side and one side, I go through and put them all on the upper sides of the chutes, and I flip the coaling tower over and then go ahead and put them all on the other side of the chutes. Now you can see the counterweights hanging between the towers here. There's 6 weights on each of those pulleys that go up to those coaling chutes. And there's 2 sets of these weights for each one of the coaling chutes. Now I went through all my beads and I had these, and I started working with them, and they were just a little bit too big. So I did a quick run out to Walmart on an afternoon, and they had these black beads of 4 different sizes, and the smallest ones actually are a nice size to use for what I'm going to be doing. So I go ahead and pour all those in the bowl, and I go ahead and make a bunch of those wires again, and real long wires. And I just, the spacing on these in the pictures looks like it's like this on all those. And I don't know why there's spaces in the last 2 balls that are separated from the upper 4 balls. But in the pictures I have, they're all separated like this. There was probably a reason. If anybody knows, let me know. But I just bend the end of the wires in a tiny little end, so the ball won't slip off the end. And I just take some super glue, and I glued the very first one on all of them and let them set up. And then I come back and glue the second one, just a little bit of spacing between the 2 balls. And I come back and do the third one. And that gives me my 2 bottom balls separated from the upper 4. So then I just come back and add the other 3 balls onto the top of that last one that I glued on, and I have all these ready to glue into place on all the coaling chutes. There's a total of 10 of these, like I said before. And basically you can see here, I just run it up through that lower pulley and then glue it into the upper pulley. And then it hangs from that lower pulley down through the window opening like you could see in the picture before. So then, while it's laying on that side, I just come back here and add all these into the top sides of each of those coaling chutes. And I'm just using super glue because I don't want to get, up in there and try to get the paint off and get a good adherence plastic to plastic. So I'm just using an AC super glue, and once I turn it over, I do all these chutes on the other side. Now on that narrow coaling stall, there was a door that went into that sand drying unit in there, and I remember I covered that over with plastic, so I need to add that back in. Now I don't want to cut a hole in that plastic, so what I'm going to do is just use a real thin piece of paper and use this 1x4 and 1x6 and basically just make a door. And I'm going to cut a tiny little piece of dowel and use it for a handle on there as well, and my door's there. So I come back and put some black paint on it and then mount that on that wall, and it doesn't stick way out like a plastic one would have done, so it looks okay underneath there. Now the next thing we need to do, and it doesn't really show it in this picture very well, but on the ends of all those coaling chutes there was a rope or a cable or something that hung down so that the firemen on the steam locomotives could pull these down to fill the tenders. So I'm coming back here with my hand little drill and just drilling holes in the ends of these chutes. I should have done this before I ever mounted them up in there, because this is kind of tedious and you have a chance of breaking them out. I just wasn't thinking that far ahead before I was doing all this. So I'm just coming back and kind of remedying that situation. Now I tried to use some more of this spun wire to make the pull downs, but they're just not long enough that, you know, there's not enough bends and twists in the wire, so the wires all want to separate, so I'm just not going to be able to use those. So I came back and cut some of the smallest dowel that I had, plastic, and decided I was going to glue those up in there for the pull down. And you can see in this picture, you know, it just doesn't look quite right. So I'm going to remove this, and between now and my next video, I'm going to try to think of something else that I can use for a pull down in here to make this happen. So there you have this week's segment of building the coaling tower. This is going to continue at least for a couple more videos. I'm not sure. There are some parts. I need some ladders and stuff, so I'm going to have to put some stuff on order, and we'll see how quick I can get those in. You know, most of my parts I get through Teachy. I've talked about them before. They're a real good company for parts for scratch building, windows, doors, all kinds of things. I'm also looking for some materials for a couple of future builds that are coming up after this, so I just need to get my order together and get it in so I can get the parts, so there's not a delay in getting these videos out there. Thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. I do appreciate it. You know, after coming back, I started looking at my analytics a little bit. Most of you are just watching probably the segment of it of me building and not me rambling on to beginning and end, which the beginning is short, but anyway, maybe I'll start talking less at the end. A lot of times I like just describing where I'm going and that type of thing, and maybe it is rambling too much, or I'm rambling too much right now, so I'm just going to jump off here and end it at this, and you don't have to watch all this. So anyway, please subscribe to my channel if you're not. I'd like to get my subscription rate up there and help my analytics a little bit by more people watching as well. You know, it's going to depend on where my future lies, as if I can get my subscribers up there to the point where I can monetize my channel. I have had people ask me about, you know, donating to help fund my channel. I do appreciate that. I had to shut down my PayPal account, and you know, there just was issues with it, and I didn't. So I've got to figure out another way to do funds for the account. I appreciate people wanting to help me do that. This does run into a little bit of money. I just bought new software for the videos and blah blah blah. So it's not a free thing to do. So anyway, I have picked up quite a few new subscribers. Thank you very much for subscribing to my channel, and we'll try to get on with this a little more in the future and see how far we can go. So anyway, tune in next week for the next segment of the coaling tower, and jump out there and scratch build something. Have some fun in the hobby. That's what it's all about. Just happy model railroading.